Hello, and welcome back to Awakening Philosophy. My name is Jed, and we are reading the Phaedo. Last time, we had a huge recap. We had a huge raid. Raid is where people who are watching another Twitch channel leave one to all join another one. It's a big, fun, happy time on Twitch. Thank you, Gabe, for raiding yesterday. And as such, we went through a lot. It was a double-length stream, close to 4 hours, but it was worth it because we are coming to the conclusion of the text. And it's not just any text. It's the literal swan song, Socrates used that analogy, of Socrates. Someone who personified philosophy. Someone who lived in the right way. And died in the right way. And didn't just die in the right way at the end of his life, he apparently died many times during his life. Why? That's what philosophy is. According to Socrates, this is what it means to live well. To practice the art of dying. Now, as a result, he said he is trusting that he is going to a better place with better men and better gods than you find here, better fellow travelers and guides than you find here, because he, like anybody who has completed their work here. So Socrates is giving us a lot of clues, because that's what he does. He's not spoon-feeding us what we need to find out, because it has to be meaningful to us. There's no use just Socrates just telling us what reality is. He has to present it in a way where if we are matching his interest, if we genuinely have questions, what is life about? What does happen when I die? What is my soul? Can my soul leave my body? What am I supposed to do for the time I'm here? If these are, significant questions to you, then you can unlock the meaning of this text. The meaning of his last day. What he said on his last day. And but in saying that, he does tell us a lot of things. He does drop some truth bombs on our asses. One of those is, what does this planet look like to someone who is existing on a different dimension? He's been talking about how the soul is immortal and indestructible. It necessarily has to be repeating cycles of reincarnation. And he's given us many reasons for that to be so. So the immortality and the cyclical incarnation of our soul is necessary for what Socrates is defining as philosophy. The text started with a definition of philosophy. This is my doctrine and my defense of philosophy. Remember, he's in prison because his defense for the way he lived and philosophy didn't persuade enough Athenians. There were only a few. There were a few more Athenians who were butthurt about Socrates' way of being, which triggered them and challenged their own ignorance, what they thought was the right way of being, even though they didn't know crap, and they sentenced him to die because of it. One of the two reasons was he believes in other spiritual things other than what the state has declared is worth believing in. And the other argument is a prejudice against philosophy itself, that you make the weaker argument sound the stronger. And that's bad because it hurts the kids. Notice the very same prejudice that exists today. What do the most prejudiced people against thinking, against reason, against progression, against empathy, against progressing forward and making things better? What's that called? What's a prejudice against change? Loosely speaking, it's conservatism. How can we understand people who are most prejudiced against thought? Well, who do those people who want to exploit us the most, the fascists, the right-wing fascists, who do they appeal to? Those. They present thinkers as bad, as left-wing elitists or some crap. Right? These are the prejudices they play into that were the exact same prejudices that existed at Socrates' time. What did they say? Oh, you with your reasoning lead us, if we converse in dialogue with you, in a friendly way, step by step, together in agreement, following reasoning, following the logos, we're led to new conclusions that are different than what we thought we knew. Often the things that make us experts, that makes me a general, that makes me a judge, that makes me a lawyer, these things turn out to be wrong. My idea of courage is wrong. My idea of justice is wrong. My idea of the good is wrong. Now, a good person will be like, wow, that's great that that was brought to the surface, because that means I can change my mind and grow. There are some people who don't think that way, and we've talked in the chat about where that comes from. Early in the evolution of our species, humans survived the very strange conditions where a meteorite killed the big dinosaurs and created a very unique, I think it's a big, huge dust cloud where a lot of other species couldn't survive. But under these unique conditions, a certain way of thinking that inside the cave is good and outside the cave of us cavemen is bad and scary, and blindly obey your tribe leader. Well, might have kept us alive before we were able to reason or learn the logos, kept us from being eaten by saber-toothed tigers. That needs to change. This a prejudice or in-group mentality to blindly obey leaders even though they're acting against your interests is one of the causes for the troubles we're having in the world, not just in humanity with, politicians and spiritual leaders being blindly obeyed and defended to the death in war against reason. I honestly believe our oldest ancestor is Bigfoot type creatures. But also within our soul. Why? We, as a byproduct of this, have a blind loyalty to the false beliefs of our clan leaders that we grew up with, the family clan. We develop prejudices or false beliefs against our own selves and the logos, the reasoning that we can do, and maybe even reality too, that we blindly defend, that are cause of our pathologos. So, as above, so below, as in society, so too within us. We need to change our minds. We need to evolve, which requires us to surface those false beliefs, address them fairly with justice and reason, purify ourselves from them, and then in that freedom from our fate, we can pursue the actual growth to understand and know the truth about those things, the truth about what's good, the truth about our soul, the truth about the divine or God, the truth about why we're here. This is what Socrates has been laying out for us. Purify ourselves from our unsuspected false beliefs that cause us to be chained to fate, Socrates literally had chains on his legs that he took off before beginning this discussion, and it's been used as a metaphor. Why? Because if we have unsuspected false beliefs that we are blindly obedient to, they will cause the repeating cycles of failures to climb the ladder of growth. And as we see with 40% of the population wherever you look, that same impulse to blindly follow family prejudices is what's preyed upon by the fascists, by the right-wingers, who are actively making people poorer and worse off and manipulating people to vote and act against their own best interests by triggering them, by pressing the prejudice button, by appearing like their false beliefs about what's good and just. And so they vote for that person, blindly following someone unjust because it kind of feels like he's right, because it feels like the clan leader of your family. Okay, so too do we do that. And one of the reasons we're here, Socrates is saying, is to purify ourselves from that. So how do we do that? By the way, because that's one of our purposes for being here, there has to be something that, in the text, Socrates says, look, there are causes for our problems. Okay, there's also something that maintains our problems, and that has a daemonic force. We looked at that last time. Bring up the text. This was these causes for our problems. Socrates realized that the other teachers were not able to see. So Socrates had to go on his second search for causes to find out these things. Now, these apply to both purification and perfection. We've been talking about two things all the way through: purifying ourselves from our problems that cause our fate, and using that freedom to perfect ourselves. Hey, being free of problems doesn't make you smart. It can free you up to pursue understanding. It can remove the distractions and things. So, causes. Daemon. Daemon. So here it is. So, and of course we've been depicting this. Here we go. These are the two ladders. The ladder up towards our destiny. It casts a shadow, which keeps us bound. Notice we don't go up. We repeat the same problems that lead us to our fate. So whatever we learn in this text, we can apply to both ladders. And these are things we've discovered by the way that we've been reading it. Looking for the puzzles, looking for the question, weaving the things together. It's a game that we're playing. The noblest. So when Socrates said, hey, by the way, these people who only explained things with physical causes, I saw a clip, I liked the YouTube channel Some More News, and the latest video was on Elon Musk, who wants to put computer chips in our brains. And he says, well, all things are caused by our brain signaling. So we can cure depression, we can cure illnesses, we can cure everything simply by using a computer chip to change our brain signals. This is someone that Socrates is saying is an idiot. He's missing the mark. Socrates wouldn't call him an idiot, of course. He has much more charm than I do. He is saying he's missing the mark because he is explaining things with physical causes. And Socrates realized that, hey, they're missing them. This isn't going to understand anything. You're not going to get to the cause of things, because there is much more important causes that are non-physical, specifically in the mind. Not only that, okay, so there are causes in the mind. Like, for example, for me, if it appeared better to me to be somewhere else and more just, these physical causes, my bones and sinews, would be making their way towards Megara or Boeotia. My cause for me being here is what I consider best, more just, and more beautiful. These are specific ideas that exist in mind. You never see justice itself, or beauty itself, or goodness itself, but we need them. We are basing our decisions upon them. Not only that, if there are a bunch of causes in mind that have their own self-existence that can be known, if we can separate our soul from our physical senses and use the mind sense, ousia, then we haven't even reached the higher level, because there is a cause for the causes. The causes in one entity, but that without which the cause would never be a cause is another. So even the one teacher he found who was talking about mind didn't go to the next level. Also, he said they missed another thing. There is a power to keep selves staying in the best possible way. Something must bind and hold selves together. And it has a daemonic force. This has been one of the puzzles that we've been talking about in Gabe's chat today. If we necessarily are in this world to learn, and the learning has two aspects, what he's calling purification and perfection. Purifying what we are carrying that's false, which gives us a freedom from our fate, freedom from our human distractions, freedom from our physical distractions, our physical senses, our pleasures and pains that can pull us off track. And that freedom can allow us to go through a kind of learning and nurture to reach truth and integrate that truth into our state of self, called in a state of being called phronesis. Then what keeps us having our problems? That's been a question we've been carrying. Is there a kind of daemonic force that talks to us in a way that will keep our problems active and alive, so we can't ignore what we're here to do? But if it's our problems, it would seem very negative. Equally so, as above, so below, is there a voice that's guiding us to our destiny? Socrates calls that a daemonic force, so we can have two kinds. The true one, the positive daemon, which is often a very quiet voice, and the negative daemon, which is keeping us chained to our problems, chained to repeating the same kinds of problems over and over, and therefore our fate. That's a puzzle. We don't have an answer yet, because this is just a hypothesis. What's most important is coming up with the question, realizing we have an inner voice, which is kind of saying all the opposite things to what we're learning in this text. Saying we are inadequate. Saying where's my pen? The self is inadequate. Saying reality doesn't exist beyond the physical world, or reality is bad. Reality is stupid and unjust and mean. Or Even if there is a reality of being, we can't know it. Nobody has died and come back. Nobody has experienced the truth of reality. Or they will say, there's no understanding. There's only opinions and beliefs. There's no logos that is universal and understandable, which we can recognize as a triad. Our self, reality, or the logos. These are three terms in the text that as soon as Socrates gave 4 arguments for why the soul has to be immortal and going through cycles of reincarnation. He needed to give those 4 arguments because his definition of philosophy is the art and practice of dying and being dead. What do you do when you're out of the body? How to get there, how to purify ourselves so we're ready, how to perfect ourselves through our education and nurture. Education, we have learned, is the art of the logos. Our nurture is applying that at all times in what we call the virtues, applying it to all 3 parts of our soul. Our desire, the art of the logos. Our courage, in the ups and downs of life and your pleasures and pains. Hold on to what the art of the logos is saying is true, not what feels true based on your prejudices or your pathologos or your family tradition or your religious mythology. And the 3rd part of the soul, reason, plan, according to the art of the logos. This is the nurturing that has to come along with our education. Learning it is one thing. Applying it to all aspects of your soul is the integration of that. As well as realizing that our vices are the shadows. Same thing. We still have the 3 parts of our souls. But by the way, if you master some of these desires, but you don't put in the art of the logos, then what's going to be guiding you? Hey, if you master all of your desires except for one and you let that guide you, you're going to get really, really good at that thing. If you master your drinking habits and your womanizing habits so you can gamble all the time, you're going to get really good at gambling. This is vice. The most terrible people who commit the most unjust actions have some degree of virtue. Only what they use it for isn't the art of the logos. So our vices, or the shadow of our virtues, we have to purify ourselves from. So how the heck do we do that? And if we can, by the way, Socrates is saying, there are levels of development. If you are motivated by your belly, you are a lover of riches or desire. Riches, you want to get rich so you can meet your desires. There's a Greek name for that. Philokrimatos. If you're motivated by the middle part of your soul, honor seeking, outward moving, you want to be loved, or you want to be famous, that's a philotimos, lover of honor. Now, if we're a lover of the body, we are one or both of those. So I was talking about Elon Musk. He, of course, wants to be rich. He, of course, wants to be loved. That's what he's doing. So he is a very good example of somebody in vice. But if we're motivated by this little part, the smallest part of our soul, the top of the snowman, so in the Taoist tradition, they mythologize this with the belly. They call this the heart and they call this the head. But of course, that's just an image because it's all of the soul. If we are motivated by this, this is called a philomathesis, or a lover of learning, philomathesis. And Socrates is saying this is where we start. And then somehow our love of learning has to become about the realm of being, reality. So we have another triad. So these are the 3 highest aspects of ourself. There is the self. There is mind or reality. Mind itself. This is the thing that one teacher that Socrates had said, oh, this is actually a cause. Of course it is. So but another triad we can say is, hang on a second. There is the world of becoming. The physical world that most of us are in. This is called the realm of being. And of course, there must be a cause for that. We call that the one or the good self. So triads upon triads. So if we're a lover of learning, we're going to be learning about the physical world of becoming. But that's not going to answer the questions because those are not good causes. You are not listening to this because you have bones. Everyone on your street has bones, but there is something in your mind that made a decision about what is best to do today. So these other ideas, what's best, what's most beautiful, what's most just, what's most good. All of these things you do not find in the physical world of becoming. They exist in the realm of mind or being. So we start as a lover of learning if we're not like Elon Musk and chasing the middle part or the bottom part. If we're a snowman like Elon Musk, who's got like this. He loves money the most. And then he's got lots of money. He wants to be famous and very little interest in learning. So this is his snowman here. So how do we go from a lover of learning to a lover of learning specifically about being? That's what Socrates is helping us to look for, because he's not telling us, but he's telling us how he got there by seeking causes, his second search for causes. So through the text, he says, look, we have to be a right lover of learning. And we looked at that last time, and he said, by the way, you know how you do it? Learn the Phaedo and repeat it all the time, every day. Tell your friends, tell your family. If you can pay money, find a singer who can sing songs about the Phaedo. Because what it's going to be is they're going to be songs that are going to sing away your fears of death. Why? Because true philosophy needs to separate your soul from the body. But if you have a false belief about death, you are going to fear it. Socrates' friends are all like that. They ain't philosophers like Socrates. So Socrates is in his, last day, and his friends are like, "Oh no, Socrates, we're so sad. By the way, we paid off the guards. They're gonna look away, and you can escape." Socrates is like, "You fools. Hey, by the way, you guys are fearing death. Do you guys know what death is? Or do you just have beliefs about death? Why do you fear something you know nothing about?" This is where we are. Why? Well, we talked about it today. We have unsuspected false beliefs about reality, about ourselves. These false beliefs keep us bound to our problems. And so Socrates is spending his last day helping people uncover their unsuspected false beliefs that cause their fear of death, that cause them to distrust themselves, distrust reason itself, true understanding, not opinions or beliefs, and fear separating the soul from the body to experience the realm of being. He's purifying them from their religious mythology, their cultural beliefs, their family beliefs. So that's the second part. After he gave his doctrine of philosophy, you have to be a lover of learning, but somehow you have to go from a lover of learning, philomathesis, to a lover of wisdom, philosophia, So our puzzle is, how do we make that jump? We haven't really been given an answer until we get right to the end. We haven't even been told what wisdom is. We had to do the work ourselves to try and figure out what it is. He's given us a lot of clues. It seems to be something about the logos directed towards being is wisdom. But then even when you get to this, lover of wisdom, you have to become a lover of phronesis, which is a mysterious fifth virtue. The four virtues talked about mastering your desires and desiring the logos. That's the virtue of temperance. Holding on to what's true, not what feels true from your upbringing and your family or your parents or your priests or culture, but what the logos says is true. That's courage. Seeking the art of the logos and learning it with your reasoning, using that to reason and plan. The logos may be directed towards being, the virtue of wisdom. By the way, if you're doing that, then every part of your soul is doing their intended function, their purpose, what they are, their purpose or highest cause. That's called justice. So justice is that fourth one. That's in each of them. But as we were talking, as Gabe and I were talking in history, these are the parts. But once you have all of the parts doing their intended function or justice, then you rise to the greater level of whole. You are a greater whole now. All parts are unified. Why? Because you're desiring reason and you're acting outwardly according to reason and you're planning according to reason. The reason of the logos that you're learning through the Phaedo. You are unified. You are made whole. So, while justice is needed in each of the parts, when you have the whole, you rise to a greater level of wholes, and that whole where you can do your highest purpose or some sort of cause in mind, because purpose is a cause. It's like, why are you here? What's your purpose? What's causing you to do this? What's your goal? Or why were you even incarnated? These are causes that require you to use mind. That's what a purpose is. So you rise to a higher level of cause, and that is doing your intended function or purpose. That's justice as a whole. So these are the four levels of virtues. Now, we are going to go into the Republic next because you have to take this kind of on trust. We have been given a lot of hints as we go. So we can kind of work this out from the Phaedo, but the Republic will really help us nail it down. So from trust that we're piecing together to our own understanding. So these four virtues can give rise to the golden coin. These are worth nothing unless you can trade them in for the mysterious fifth virtue called phronesis. These are practice. These take habit. These take learning and nurture. This mysterious fifth virtue, phronesis, is innate and doesn't lose its power, which means it could be, hypothetically, as our hypothesis, a kind of learning and state of self that we can carry with us at all times. So much easier than having courage, because you're still having the ups and downs and you have to say, no, Socrates says I don't suck and reality is knowable and I should be focused on that. And there is an understanding that can lead me to it. That's not opinion. And I can have the logos, and it's my logos. It's the self logos. So learning is a kind of remembering. You have to hold on to that even though you're in the physical world of becoming, with ups and downs and fears and pleasures and pains and desires. It takes work. It takes a good community. Join the community on Discord. It takes practice. That's our paideia, our learning. But this guy, once you get there, doesn't lose its power. Kind of state of self you can maintain. So one of the questions is, how does that work? Well, Socrates says, if you go from a lover of learning to a lover of wisdom, then you are using your study or your learning, like the Phaedo specifically. This is why we're in the Phaedo. The best person to learn from is Socrates, who's done this journey. Like if you want to travel to, Disneyland, talk to someone who's been there. Talk to someone who's made the journey many, many times and has made a map. That's Socrates. By the way, in the text, he's giving us the map next. So that's interesting. It's a little teaser. So we have to go from lover of learning in the world of becoming to a lover of the logos directed towards being. That's philosophy. And so Socrates talks about, okay, if you're a lover of learning, you are in the realm of beliefs. So make sure you're learning the right beliefs. This is our repetition of what we're learning. This is why we recap a lot. This is why we share our thoughts with each other in Discord. This is why we do this podcast every day. This is why we tune in on YouTube and Twitch. I am now simulcasting on Twitch and YouTube, which is exciting. Socrates says, by the way, don't stop there. Don't stop at loving of learning. Don't stop at just trust. What we might call belief. Of course, there are many different levels of belief. There are spiritual beliefs. There are false beliefs. There are prejudices. There are scientific beliefs of the physical world. Now we have a reason to believe Socrates, who has understood not just the physical world, but this realm and this realm. So we have a good reason to trust Socrates. So the trust of Socrates is a much higher level of belief than trusting scientists or trusting TV or trusting our parents or our early teachers, trusting our religion, trusting racist people, prejudices from our society or culture. But don't stop there. We have a reason to trust Socrates. That's lover of learning. But after he gave his doctrine of philosophy, he said, hey, real philosophy is separating your soul from the body. So he outlined, so there are stages. You start at trust, lover of learning, but then you have to go into a different cognitive function called dianoia. Didn't tell us what it was. And by the way, dianoia is much better, different cognitive function. And that purifies you, by the way. It has an effect on your soul. And that opens the door for a kind of call up to the big leagues. And we have a quote. I like this quote. We'll be closest to knowing when we don't associate or commune with the body more than's necessary. We purify ourselves from it until the divine self should liberate us. So there's a kind of liberation from the body. We won't have phronesis of the body. We will be with a kind that is pure. And so he also points out, by the way, how do we get that? We start by studying those causes that are in mind that regular teachers, and in our day and in Socrates' day, ignore. They don't get into these causes, like Elon Musk we talked about, like behavioral psychologists or material scientists. Yesterday we talked about Richard Dawkins and Ricky Gervais. Of course, they're more rational than people who are following false beliefs or supernatural religious beliefs, but they're stuck. They need to go beyond that. 2, causes in mind. Such causes like justice, beauty, good, the ones we mentioned today. In fact, they have an existence called ousia, and that exists in being, that can be known in contemplation, which in order to do, you have to separate yourself from the body. You do that through dianoia. So something called dianoia applied to those selves. And that will bring you closest to nous, which is a kind of knowing through direct experience. And from that other quote we saw, it's a kind of preparation or getting into the doorway until the divine self elevates you up. So you start at trust, lover of learning, repeating this. We go to dianoia, don't know what it is, and that allows us to reach nous. These are types of thinking, cognitive functions, we would say. Right? If you are just stay in the world of becoming, you can't know anything for certain, because nous is what we would call knowledge, knowing it for certain. So our scientific theories are always going to be theories. That's this level. So one of our questions was, what the heck is dianoia? That's what we've been learning this whole time, because we have been doing dialectics. So what is that? We are most accurately understanding things in self, like this one we did yesterday. Being, that's an ousia. That's literally the whole realm of ousia. So these are the 4 parts. These are the exercises. Last time we talked about gathering key terms. It's like farming for loot. But then you have to make use of those key terms by weaving a new suit of armor with the leather that you've collected from tigers you've been killing in a video game. So this is the weaving together, the dialectic. So this weaving together requires key terms from the text. It requires you to be puzzled, to talk with your friends, as people in our community do. They have questions, they ponder things, they talk about what they think about themselves and their mind and their thoughts and why we're here and where we go. So this is what we've been learning this all the way through. Socrates didn't tell us right away. He gave us hints and he gave us instruction through the text that we would have only seen if we were genuinely looking, if we were stung, if there was something in our mind saying, "What? How do I get into philosophy?" So this is dianoia. What the heck is dianoia? And of course, that's just a stepping stone to direct experience or nous. He's already told us this is literally separating from your physical senses, because our physical senses help us to see and smell and hear things in the realm of becoming. They are physical senses of the physical realm. Yay. Confetti. Okay, so we need another sense, and thankfully we have one. That's called ousia, or the eye of the soul. Someone last time in chat mentioned, oh, by the way, that's what we call the third eye. So how do we do that? Socrates has been giving us instruction all the way through. Don't commune with the body. Don't chase pleasures. Don't be afraid of pains. Spend time doing this. Philosophy. And if you do have extreme pleasures or pains, don't mistake them for what's most clear and real. All the way through, he's been giving us a million different tips on how to do this. So that, if we go from lover of learning to lover of philosophy, learning with the terms of the logos, learning the self-logos, which we're learning is an understanding that permeates everything. It's the understanding, it's the understandableness of reality. So all of this nonsense about whose beliefs are right or whose religious beliefs or political beliefs are like, that's garbage. It's garbage. You're garbage, says Socrates. Don't do it. You have to start with a kind of trust, but only use it as a springboard to develop dianoia. So if somebody is selling you trust or belief or opinions and is not helping you learn dianoia, they are a con artist, scammer, grifter, charlatan. What do politicians say? Trust me. Have hope. What do cult leaders say? Hey, have faith. I have the ancient texts. What do kings say? Oh, God divinely appointed me to be a tyrant over you, says the king and queen. Just believe it. But there's no evidence. Screw evidence. Have faith. Come on. Come on. Come on. They do this. They do this with their hands. Come on. Just trust me, bro. Socrates says, by the way, these people, if you don't listen to me, okay, so what do we do instead? Trust Socrates. Because we have a lot of good reasons to. He isn't selling anything. He is demonstrating an art to benefit. He has shown he's gone to Disneyland a lot of times. He has nous of it. He does understand it. He does trust it too. He has all of that. Okay? But also another reason to trust Socrates is he's giving us what we need if we play. He's not spoon feeding it to us. We're 60 episodes in, good gosh darn it, 61. We've had to work. I mean, it's play. It's the most interesting thing. And it's, and in this podcast, you can be gaming while listening to me. So, it's not like we're moving heavy rocks around. It's fun. So if we do this, we can learn dianoia. So we're trusting someone who is, it's like if you want to learn to be a mechanic. If you had an apprenticeship and he was just saying, he said, oh, okay, and here's where you put the spark plug and this is where you put the alternator. And you said, okay, yep. And you'd have to start by trusting him. But if he said, oh, by the way, and you said, oh, why does the alternator go there and not here? Oh, just trust me. What? You'd say, what? And then you'd say, what? And then everyone around you would say, because that's mental. How are you going to learn how to be a mechanic if you just trust him? That's bollocks. So anyone who says that is a scammer. And you wouldn't have an apprenticeship. You'd leave him. By the way, if you did trust him to begin with, he'd probably have to be able to show an understanding of how cars work and have some sort of experience. Maybe he can demonstrate his art. And you say, oh yeah, he's fixed everyone's car in town. He knows what he's doing. The reason to trust him. But it has to move you to understanding. That's what Socrates is doing. Okay? And so this dianoia is philosophy. So another word for philosophy, because lover of wisdom is specifically pointing to this virtue, but not everybody is aware of the virtues. So another way of saying what philosophy is not philosophia, love of that virtue of wisdom, philodianoia, love of dianoia, which is a kind of not trust understanding, but not just any old understanding of the physical world, like understanding how to become a mechanic, how to fix your engine, understanding this realm of reality that is the cause of this realm. And very important because we are not just physical, we have a mind. So if we have important questions, like why are we here, it's going to have to account for our minds. And we know ourselves that we make our decisions based on what is best for us. We might be wrong, but even tyrants do what they think is good. So we're not going to help tyrants by punching them in the face. We have to find out why they think this is good. That's going to be the cause for their injustice. And we recognize that as here. If the destiny requires us to know the truth about good and beauty and justice, in the realm of being, then its shadow would be the image of what's good. So every problem is someone doing what they falsely think is good. Hey, people kill others because they thought it's good to invade that country or to kill that heathen or whatever. Equally so, real. We wouldn't believe it if we didn't think it was real or knew reality in some way. The image of wisdom. So we want to actually know reality. So we want to purify ourselves from that. So Socrates is saying, hey, look, philosophy is separating the self from the body. You have to go from lover of learning, repeat this through trust, but then learn the dianoia. That's what we've been doing all the way through. But if you have been learning it and you've been thinking about it, contemplating it, desiring it, in your outward activities, that's courage. Listening to this podcast. This is a preparation for the divine self, letting you into the club of nous. Well, you actually go there. You actually separate the soul from the body. So the arguments of Richard Dawkins and Ricky Gervais and those sorts of people who say, nobody's ever come back from the dead to tell us about it. Wrong. You haven't read Socrates, or all of the translations up to the most recent one have not given you the right words for some political religious reason, for some problem of the authorities in the field for the last few hundred years, thousands of years. The sorts of authorities we call the Romans, the Third Reich, Second and Third Reichs, the Roman people who killed the philosophers and then supported Hitler, by the way. Interesting tidbit. And what do? Ban philosophy. Replace dianoia and nous for blind obedience in authorities. Faith, they called it. You couldn't even have a Bible. You would be murdered because you are supposed to blindly obey what we say because we wear the funny hats and have the swords. Okay? It's a Latin tradition that didn't have the word the, so they couldn't even become a philosopher. So our English tradition or our modern tradition is a lineage of the Latin or Roman people from Aristotle onwards. Alexander the Great. So after Socrates, Plato didn't quite get to Socrates' level, but after Plato was Aristotle, and then he was in this, Aristotle was firmly in this realm. And he taught Alexander the Great, and so on and so on and so on. So that's the lineage we are in. If we didn't have a word for the, we could not look for the beautiful, which has a selfhood in the realm of being. We could only look at a beautiful thing in the realm of becoming. No word for the. Thankfully, in English, we have the word the, but we do not have, so we need to fix this, the word dianoia. In fact, it was not translated until the Balboa translation, a recent translation which actually has the Greek. Sometimes it's dianoia, sometimes it's knowledge, but sometimes nous is knowledge, sometimes phronesis is wisdom or knowledge. So all the terms are mixed up. It's like playing a video game where you have the key to level 5 on level 1, and then you have a gun from a different game that you can't even use in this game, and then you encounter a boss that's from a different platform. Like, what? This is a PlayStation boss. I'm playing a different game. It's all mixed up. So one of the questions that came up today in our conversation on Gabe's channel, how come nobody's talking about this? How come all of our conversations are just about opinions, which is even below the level of trust, really? Because we've got no reason to trust our opinions. It's just belief. Or opinions. And you know that saying, opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got them and they stink. Yeah, no joke. No joke, because they come from people pretending, cosplaying as being knowing. They don't know. So how come no one's talking about it? How is no one talking about the beautiful itself, or the realm of being, or even logos? Why are we in opinions when there's actually something that's universally understandable? That Socrates told us about 2,500 years ago. That is literally an understanding that can solve our problems, societal problems and our internal ones, because it's the same principles reflected higher and lower. Why isn't anyone talking about this? I mean, maybe you got lucky and YouTube algorithm recommended you this, or someone mentioned, hey, this is weird guy Jed and he talks about how to read Phaedo properly. But it's actually like an amazing video game that Socrates is talking to us through time in some weird way. You need to check it out. Unless you get lucky, you're not going to hear this anywhere. Socrates was in the same boat, by the way. Yeah, I had to go on this search for causes. No teachers around talking about it. One of the reasons is the historical counterattack against thought, reason. In fact, Socrates predicted it. He said, hey, if you don't do this, the people who claim to be experts will say that they are the most wise, not because they have actually mastered the dianoia and nous. Not because they've gone from trust and the lover of learning to philosophy, mastering a kind of understanding of the realm of being and the causes for our physical world. And even in that, you brought that understanding with them out of the body to experience this realm. And maybe while they're out of this realm, even took their learning and their education and their nurture to meet better guides and fellow travelers to go beyond to an even higher dimension. No. No one's going to say that's what makes them wise. They're going to say they are wise because they have figured out that there is no reality. Like Ricky Gervais and Dawkins. Oh, and they are really wise because they know there is no understanding. Like anyone selling a belief or opinion. Who cares about your dumb opinion? Oh, because my opinions are alpha opinions. My opinions are right-wing or left-wing opinions. Oh, and if there's no ultimate truth and there's no understanding of it, there's no use of it together to benefit people. So while there might be an art of being a mechanic or art of medicine that can benefit the car or the person in medicine, there's no art of the soul, there's no art of politics, there's no art of spirituality or religion. He predicted our whole world. So what's going to make them so smart? They'll reject this. And they won't be lovers of learning, that become lovers of wisdom, that becomes lovers of a kind of state where you're always in this realm with understanding, called phronesis. No. They will be lovers of fighting, debate bros we call them nowadays, philonikos in the Greek, lovers of contention. You know the ones. They yell on YouTube, they yell on Twitch, they yell on the news. Yellers. All of the politicians, they don't actually do anything good. They have, Socrates calls it, a anti-logos. They just crap on everything. I'm not going to find what's actually the true state of justice, beauty, excellence, and good, and then diagnose our problems in society so that I can artfully provide a remedy just like a doctor would. No. I'm just going to hate on everyone else. Oh, but what about the other team? What about the left? What about the other team? Anti-logos. Attacking people for having problems. Attacking people for being in ignorance. You know what? We all have problems. Every single one of us. If you go into a doctor's office with an illness, he won't say, oh, you're bad and or sinful and I have to kill you. He would say, well, yeah, you're a human being. You get illness. That's why we have the art of medicine. Our job is to bring goodness in to make you more good through my art. What these false philosophers or false experts, Socrates says, will do is the opposite. They will say, because they don't have an art, I will bring badness in, and somehow that will make you more good by punishment or torture or war or poverty or wealth inequality. Hey, pull yourselves up from your bootstraps. By being bad to you, I'm actually helping you. Nonsense. And we saw why that's the case. It's one of our arguments for the soul being immortal. You can't make something more good by being bad to it. Just like if the soul is necessarily brings in life, you can't have the soul if you bring in the opposite, death. So the argument was, if a fire brings in heat, if you bring in the opposite of heat, cold, the fire will run away or be destroyed. So too, if the soul is what brings in life, and life has an opposite, death, there's no opposite of the soul, but it brings in something, then the soul has to run away from death, the same way fire has to run away from cold. So this was the argument Socrates shared with us, so we can not just trust that our soul is immortal, have what we need to understand why it must be necessarily so, and best that it is, in a beautiful argument. Necessity tied to justice, by the way. It's a puzzle. I'm not telling you why. I still don't even know. It's a puzzle. In a similar way, because terms may vary, but relations stay the same, this idea that if we if our learning is towards the good, or our mind or our soul is towards the good, then bringing in the opposite, bad, ruins your learning, diminishes your soul or your mind. So, at least learning. So this idea that violence is good because people are made more good by introducing the bad, because it teaches them a lesson, is stupid and wrong and ignorant. And usually to justify cosplaying as being wise when you haven't learnt in actual art, like a doctor. It takes work to learn the art of medicine. But if you think, oh, I just have to hit someone with a stick and I'm a doctor? Easy, I can pretend to hit people with sticks, or I can hit people with sticks and pretend to be a doctor. Anti-logos, violence, lover of fighting, philonikos. So, hey, all of the people who are the most prejudice and violence, do they all act like they know things? Yes. That's why they get a kick out of it. That's why they vote for the racist or whatever, or the conservative. They got a gun. Anyone can pull a trigger of a gun. Literally, babies kill family members every day. So they got a gun, that must make me wise, is the con. So we want to actually get wisdom. So we've got to purify ourselves from our ignorance to learn the art. So, from trust to dianoia, from dianoia to nous. How do we get to nous? What's that like? Necessarily, you have to leave your senses in the realm of becoming to open the sense or separate the soul from the body. Socrates says, by the way, that's the same as death. So if you fear death, you can't reach nous, which is what you really want. So we have to, and by the way, you got no reason to fear death because you don't know what death is. You never learned this. So we have to purify ourselves from what we think we know. So this is the text. He outlined all this, and then the Simius and Cebes would say, hang on a second, if you're saying true philosophy and true spirituality and personal development, and our purpose here is to go from trust to dianoia and dianoia to nous, and if we have all of it together and we've been practicing it, we've got the virtues, and that will allow us to have a state of learning and a state of self called phronesis, that is a kind of vision beyond the physical world. and a learning that we can take with us to escape our reincarnations, that means we have to separate our soul from the body. That means our soul isn't the body and can exist out of the body. And it also means there's reincarnation. If we keep getting reincarnated up or down based on how well we lived or how poorly we lived. Can you help me to understand why that's the case? And he outlined 4 arguments, and they trusted him, and they followed, and they were very happy. The 4 arguments: the there must be resources argument, the cyclical nature of the physical world argument, if there's a dying and coming to be, if there is a being alive and dying, there must be a being dead and coming to be alive. The resources, our souls must come from somewhere. The Enderman argument: Enderman is a sleepy zombie. Everyone would end up asleep if we don't also wake up, which is a metaphor for being alive and dead. And the third argument, or the fourth argument, third, Enderman, resources, cycle, learning as remembering. One that we're familiar with if we've read other Socrates texts. And even Sebe's was familiar enough with it. So he was familiar enough with it that he had developed a learning, a trust. He was able to recount it. Just like if you're a mechanic and you're watching how your, what's the opposite of apprentice? Master? Is there a word for it? If you watch how your master fixes a certain kind of problem, you can just repeat it. So that's a level of trust. Or imitation. Now, if you understand why it goes there, then you can get a different problem that's similar and you can work it out and you can fix it. Otherwise, you could only fix the exact same problems you've already seen. You'd be stuck at imitation. So Simmias was able to function at this level and give a 4-part dialectic of why all our learning is remembering what our soul already knew. Remember, we recognize beautiful things, but we've never seen beautiful itself in the physical world. Then where the heck do we learn it? You've never seen a thing that's exactly equal to another thing. Then how can we recognize 2 sticks being roughly equal? All of these causes we recognize even before learning it. Therefore, we are remembering something we once knew. Therefore, our soul must be immortal and has experienced this realm of being. Okay, but we need to go beyond trust. Why? Because we have to be able to use it as an art. So one of our questions is, what do you need for an art? Socrates says, hey, look, if you just trust me, then one of these haters or anti-logos or lovers of fighting will use an argument that sounds like your upbringing or your culture or your religious mythology, and that will throw you into all sorts of disarray. You won't know what to believe. And especially if you were already convinced based on trust, and then all of a sudden what Socrates said about the immortality of soul, like Richard Dawkins or someone comes along and gives you something else that seems more probable, you might go, hang on a second. This logos that Socrates was using is rubbish. There is no understanding. Now this other guy's sounds more true. Oh, and maybe there's no understandability in reality. Or it's a conning me. I believe Socrates, but he was wrong. It's a con. Or maybe I suck because I was the one who judged it. So Socrates pointed out these 3 things that if we stay at the level of trust, when an anti-logos or philonikos, lovers of fighting or debate bro or shouting head on TV, says something that triggers you or is, touches a bruise or is familiar, this is what will happen. He's pointing to our problem. It will sound true. It will prevent us from climbing the ladder to reach real truth. And that happened. After these 4 arguments, Simmias and Cebes both presented one that reflects the religions of their time, which may reflect the religions that you're in, or one of the ones that you're in, and it threw everyone into disarray. They didn't know what to believe. Socrates is like an hour from his death. Like, oh my god, Logos is wrong, there's no realm of being, there's no art of, and I am no good probably too. Socrates has an hour to fix that problem. He said, look, a bee will leave you with a sting and die. That's terrible. I want to do the opposite. So he's got some work to do. He says you need to develop an art. If you trust without developing the art of the Logos, you won't have an art to judge, and you will be conned. That's our world. That's our soul. We are all conned from an early age. It's part of being human. But we can develop. It's not because your teachers were evil. Because your teachers, parents, teachers, priests, whoever, are all somewhere between here and here. The most worthless are very, very rare. Maybe a Hitler or someone. But also, the Socrates types are very rare too. So everyone is some level of develop and some level of problem. That's what it means to be human. That's why we have both. There must be something also maintaining our problem and our curiosity, by the way. 2 kinds of inner guides. Put that on aside for a second. So, what is this art? This is the greatest defect. If you end up hating the Logos because you are blaming Logos, reason itself, and not your lack of an art to judge this person as trustworthy, this argument as trustworthy, you won't do the Logos, and then you won't be able to reach reality and being and truth, all of the things in here. That's why it's a problem. The greatest problem we have to be on guard against. So, what the heck is this art of the Logos? That must be something beyond trust. By the way, the 4th argument on trust, that our soul is immortal and goes through reincarnation, Cebes was able to give based on imitation, but when his friend Simmias said, I don't understand, can you break it down so I can understand? Like a good apprentice would ask if he's not following. Simmias wasn't able to. So he didn't have the art. He was stuck here. And later we saw him use the word trust instead of understanding later on too. So we confirmed our suspicions, our hypothesis. Socrates gave us a lot of tips or hints as to how we get dianoia. Something to do with creating a hypothesis, an if statement, pushing the implications, coming to a conclusion based on what's sufficient, necessary, and beautiful. And if you can come up with a better hypothesis, don't hold on to your babies. Create a new one. And because we were doing some work, and we did some work in the opening of the Parmenides before we jumped in, we had a structure, a kind of if statement about the self terms, the self-being terms, that we're able to push the implications of in the 3rd step, and also bring together in the 4th step. So because we bring with us our understanding, we were able to make sense of that explanation of how to understand, which also ties in with this quote we have. Because we are understanding each of the selves. Dianoia. And here's the other quote. There is no greater defect than one can suffer than to hate logos. But hatred of logos and hatred of humans arise out of the same condition. Excessive trust in someone without use of art. Another quote. That sick condition happens whenever anyone puts their trust in some logos as being true without the use of the art of the logos. So he's saying the stakes, why it's important to develop the art of the logos. And that's what we've been playing. That's what we've been doing. Everything we become curious about whenever he mentions beauty or being or justice or the soul, we put it into if it exists, side A. If it doesn't exist, which is side B. And then we do 4 categories. What can we say about it? How does it function? Those things that have been affected by its functioning, how do they affect other things? And all of those others, how do they, having been affected, how do they relate back? Last time we did the hell's that on my screen? Oh, it's from the quote. It's from this. Here's another quote. Many are the staff bearers, but few are the inspired mystics. These are, according to my opinion, none other than those who have practiced philosophy correctly. So it's also the spiritual tradition. Okay, last time we did an example of in being. What can we say about if being exists? What can we say about it? We said it was eternal. How does it function or demonstrate self to another? And the other we picked was beauty. You have to pick another other. It gives beauty eternity or eternal existence. Why? Because that's one of its nature. See, it rolls on. Okay, then how does beauty affect others? All people at any place and time can seek self-beauty because it's eternal. So notice, it rolls on. And then how do those others, having been affected by this, relate back to being, we learn true philosophy or philodianoia to reach our true purpose. Why? Because we can seek being. Because it's beautiful. And we seek beauty. Why? Because beauty is eternal. See how it flows? Causal chain. An unfolding and a reversion. 4 categories. So simple. And so fun. Unifies our seeing. So what? Well, this is the art. Has to involve that. By the way, Simmias was able to hit all 4. So he was able to do it at the level of trust. In other words, he could define it. He could not demonstrate it. Because these 4 parts, you also refers to how you communicate it to somebody else. You don't just define these things, you have to demonstrate it. So the dialectic is also used in conversation. Socrates has been showing us how it works. So when Simmias wanted a demonstration, Cebes couldn't do it, Socrates did. So he's showing us what it would look like to function with this art of the logos. To bring Simmias to understanding. Cebes was stuck on trust. He's got a problem, by the way. So what? So we need to get to, we understand it for ourselves, we know the structure, we've seen it in play, but that is a doorway to nous. Socrates says, by doing this with your friends every day, all the time. That's, by the way, that's virtue. Because your intended function is the art of the logos. What you're here for is literally what you're here for. And if you don't do it, you keep reincarnating around until you do. And maybe if you don't do it, you'll have a problem. They'll get you stuck. And you can't leave a realm of Tartarus where you get punished. Some souls like Hitler maybe, or Pol Pot, have done so much injustice they can't come back around and then become a bee and then become a wolf and a donkey and a tiger, and eventually after lots and lots of pain and suffering become a human being. And then maybe if they're lucky come across this channel or come across someone like Socrates to actually say that this is what you're here for, to give you that first level of trust and help you develop dianoia. So by the way, if you're watching this, then you've gone through a lot over your incarnations to get here. Don't drop the ball. Socrates says that if you drop the ball and get into loving pleasures and pains and think that's more real, that's self-imprisonment. He said, self-in... Here we go. You must follow a virile philosopher. Virile is courage. The power of courage. Follows the logos in this way. Must free herself, but don't deliver herself back to those pleasures and pains and imprison yourself again. If you follow the logos, you will achieve a calm from these emotions. And you will always commune in this, the true and the divine, and behold the unopinable, beyond opinions and beliefs. You'll behold it, you'll know it. And being so nurtured, you got to keep practicing it. It's a nurturing. And you think and you believe you must live in this way as long as you live. When you die, you will go to that which is akin and be with such a kind, and you will escape from human ills. So, both in this lifetime, escape from your problems by doing this, but also escaping the cycles of reincarnation. And he also says, here we go. One who love learning, recognize, okay, lover of learning, that when philosophy takes hold, there's the transition from loving learning to loving philosophy, loving wisdom. You were solely imprisoned and clinging in the body, even when you were a lover of learning. You thought that the body was it. There's only the physical world. That's all you know. Unless you've maybe had a near-death experience or a meditation experience or a certain sporting experience where you've been able to see yourself from above your body, or drug experience, or reasoning. You don't have to have the experience. You can just love reason and this will make sense. That's another way in. Can be from experience, can be from learning. I don't know if it's 50-50, but these seem to be the way that people get into this. You're a lover of learning, but then lover of philosophy. Before you get into loving philosophy, being, you are completely in the body and you cling to the body. And you see reality through your body as if through a cage. Wow.
Wow. Wow.
But not self by self, not out of the body, soul on its own. So you're wallowing in every kind of darkness, perceiving the strangest feature of this imprisonment as it happens through the desires. The desires are worse. That's what imprisons us. The desires are worse than our fears or our pains. Pleasure is worse than pain. Oh my God.
I don't want to eat a monkey. I don't want to eat a monkey.
Don't desire to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
As Joe Rogan says,
I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey. Why are desires worse than... Hang on. Why are desires worse than fears or pains? That's a question.
Come on, man.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Why? Because it says here that self-imprisonment is the greatest assistant of our own imprisonment. Interesting.
Wow.
Thus, lovers of learning recognize that when philosophy takes hold of her soul, this is the transition, philosophy gently encourages her. This is me. I'm gently encouraging you. Come on, man.
Flibbity jibbity nonsense.
No.
What in the? Come on, man.
Come on, man. Do philosophy.
Come on, man.
Come on, man. Just like Joe Biden says.
Come on, man.
Come on, man. Don't eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Gently encourages and tries to free her by revealing that searching through the eyes is full of deceit, as with the ears and other senses, you're not going to find being or the self wandering around, just like you've never seen one or two, maybe on Sesame Street, the only one you're going to see a puppet of a one walking around and meeting two, and they'll sing a song. But that's not really one or two, they're just puppets. You're not going to find being or the self. So this is the transition from learning to philosophy. So we say, hey, some people have an experience and then they get into philosophy because they want to make sense of their experience of being. But Socrates is saying, well, you got to be a lover of learning too. You got to learn about it. You don't have to have experience, can come later. So persuading her, gently guiding her.
Come on, man.
Come on, man, do philosophy.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Don't eat a monkey, says Joe Rogan. Okay, and what does philosophy do? Summons her to gather together and collect self into self. Your body isn't yourself. It's not your soul. Okay, and trust the real beings self by self through nous, according to self by self. So nous, of course, is that what we want here. The soul of the true philosopher wants to deliver herself from pleasures and pains, fears and desires. And the greatest and most extreme of them all, the greatest problem is that when you think that these pleasures and pains are most real. Your conclusion about it both being real and clear traps you. We call that addiction, by the way. So Socrates is laying out what addiction is. You think this extreme pleasure or pain is most real and clear, and therefore you seek it. Because we seek true reality and clarity. So if something appears to be it, it will take its place. These are the vices or addictions, problems. Okay. So now he's talking about, hey, you start with a lover of learning, but then philosophy takes hold, guides you, persuades you, encourages you, says to you,
Come on, man.
Come on, man. Does this with the hands. Come on, man. Do philosophy. You can do it. And that's what I've been trying to do my best with in this podcast. Encouraging people. Join live on YouTube and Twitch if you like. I'm experimenting with streaming to both at the same time. All of these are free on YouTube. There's a Discord community you can join. Lots of people in there having their own chats, which is fantastic. Bringing to birth their own questions in their own communities and in their own lives with their family members too. And come on, man, support on Patreon too. If you think it's worth sharing and you can afford it. Otherwise, there's no gatekeeping. Just it's for everybody. Like and subscribe. That's all you need to do. Right, and so only through this can you reach nous, which is the self by self beholding of true being. So this will give us a paradigm of truth through knowing it. It will give us an understanding of its parts and its relationships of parts through the dialectic and the self-logos terms. The self-logos, the dialectic. and will give us reason to trust what we come up with through our hypotheses, as Socrates does. So one of the big questions in this game: how come no one is talking about this? Literally, the experts in the field of philosophy ain't teaching dianoia. They're trust Kant, trust Hegel, trust me, the teacher. Even psychotherapists, they have their own personal opinions that they, play with. It's an eclectic tradition. Even the experts on YouTube, they all debate. It's all opinions. Why is no one talking about dianoia? And no one's talking about nous. And no one's talking about the art which requires both. And no one's talking about the state of self called phronesis, that is to be connected with this level of being forever, and gives you a state of self I gotta figure out how to do these searches better, because I typed in state of self, but it's given me all of the times the word of is used. Here we go. Here we go. If you do go from dianoia to nous, you pass into that realm which is pure, eternal, deathless. Add that to your dialectic. These are some key terms. That's gold there. Whatever dialectic you've been doing does pure, deathless, eternal fit. And you remain, abide in the same way, always akin with self. You cease from your wandering. You're always always remain according to the same in the same way about those beings, and you remain in contact with such beings. This state of self is called phronesis. And the other time, we should make that a quote, by the way. But also, there was another, the implication. So that's a kind of definition of phronesis, but there was also so that's definition, but this next category of our dialectic, if we're doing one on phronesis, would be how it functions. Here's a good one where it talks about its functioning. It's given to us in the negative, which means we have to do the work to flip it into the positive. So this is what it would not happen. So those who this dangerous condition that there is nothing sound in the logos, can't do that. We have to bravely and eagerly pursue the truth, which is the opposite of that. Okay. So those who are not philosophers, but are lovers of philonikos, or lovers of fighting or debating or arguing or yelling, or this is very attractive because you can appear smart, because look at how much I yell, I must be certain. Every second YouTube video is some Karen or Ken, look at, I'm telling you kids, don't skateboard around here, I must be right because I'm yelling. So these lovers of contention, they won't know whether the logos under discussion maintains phronesis and ousia. So that's what they don't have, which means we have to gain an insight. We can gain an insight if we flip it, do some work. That means if we aren't lovers of fighting or debating, debate bros, or we're not using philosophy to shit on people, but to bring people up, to persuade and encourage and gently, introduce them into philosophy. Hey, come on, man. We say to them,
Come on, man.
come on, man, some philosophy. And they say, oh, but I like my pleasures more. And we say,
I don't want to eat a monkey.
so I don't want to eat a monkey. Don't do that.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey. do philosophy. Right? So if we're like that, then we can have this state of self, phronesis, that can tell us whether or not the logo serves it. So that's a benefit. Socrates has been talking about a daemon guide. We can be our own daemon guide using our state of phronesis. This is important. Anyone who's been in that flow state, you want to stay there. In fact, baseball famously, when a pitcher is in the flow state, he's just on fire, he can't miss. So famously, athletes are aware of a kind of phronesis. Again, they're in their body, so it's not pure phronesis, but they can recognize it. They, of course, don't have the logo, so they don't have their own, So one of the questions was, how come no one's talking about us? Well, they kind of are. They just don't have the logos. No one's reading Socrates. And there's reasons for that. But we can now. We've got the text. So good for us. So we can do it.
Come on, man.
Come on, man. We can do it. But they are kind of talking about it. They call it being on the zone or being on fire. But again, it's a very stupid language. Like, not stupid. It's a very basic language, kind of colloquial language. And if a pitcher is tapped into a little bit of phronesis, they don't know how to maintain it. So if you look at the videos of when it happens, you'll see a pitcher. So baseball's pretty much a single person game. It's pitcher versus batter. It's pretending to be a team sport, but it's really one guy. So he has to throw a ball, for those who don't know what baseball is, and he has to go throw it to his friend standing behind. He's the catcher, and he has to throw it so fast or so tricky that the batter doesn't hit it. That's called a strike. Now, then the other team brings his pitcher out at the end. Like they have innings, like have turns. I'm going to be a pitcher and you're the batter. And then after 3 outs, we swap. That happens 9 times. So between innings, the pitcher has to sit in the dugout while the team bats. Because they don't know what it is and they don't know how to maintain that state, you will see a pitcher way down in the dugout on one end by himself and everyone else on the other end. They're not allowed to talk to him. They're not allowed to touch him or be near him. Famously. Why? Because they don't know what maintains or gets you out of that state. And there are some funny stories on YouTube of like young rookies like a first year sports person, and the pitcher's in phronesis, or physical phronesis, so not pure but physical phronesis. And it's like, why is no one cheering him on? It's like, so I started cheering him on. Come on, you can do it. And then everyone else was just glaring at me. They weren't saying anything because they don't talk, because they don't know what's going to happen if they talk. They don't know whether the logos that they will say will maintain the pitcher's phronesis. So they can't even tell the rookie to shut up. There's some funny stories on YouTube about that happening. But then they tell him, hey, don't talk to him when he's in the zone. We don't know what it is. We don't know if what you say, your logos, will maintain his phronesis. So just shut up. So there are some people talking about it. But, well, yeah. So Gabe's question, how come no one's talking about this? Well, because they're not allowed to, because they don't know whether it's going to maintain it. And so we'll put us in green. And by the way, the people who aren't philosophers, who pretend to be the experts in our world, and in Socrates' time too, lovers of fighting and debating, and, you know, hey, isn't it interesting there are a lot of wars? It seems like the people who claim to be experts have a love of fighting. Like Socrates is diagnosing our problems through time. And for our soul, when you're struggling, do you fight yourself? Do you beat yourself up? Do you put yourself down? Do you try and power through with struggling against yourself? Or do you use the logos, the art of the logos? Well, probably the former, because we haven't learnt the art of logos. Why? Because we've only had the text for 5 years. Now, if you're a historian or you like to make movies, it can be fun to pinpoint the moments in history where we made the sharp turns away from this. Like why the libraries were burnt down, why the school of Plato was shut down, why the libraries of Alexandria was burnt several times, why the Third Reich happened, what it had to do with the religious leaders at the time, and why in the last 5 years we have this. We've talked a little bit about it, but it's a good question. And if you get into it, it's worth sharing with the world. As we are sharing this with each other and the world in Discord, on YouTube and Twitch at the same time. All right, so they don't know whether the Logos maintains it, but if we have the art of the Logos, we will know whether or not the Logos from our own state of self maintains that transition from, you write it down, from lover of learning, philomathesis, lover of philosophy, lover of wisdom, logos to being, to phronesis. If we have that phronesis, we'll know whether the logos maintains it or not, which is a cool thing to look forward to. So all of this is needed, from trust, lover of learning, repeating this, doing the Phaedo every day or a lot, dianoia, do the dialectics that we've been doing, practice it, get better at it, share it on Discord or in chat on YouTube, or in the comments on YouTube. That will open you up to being invited into the club. Socrates said at the start, let's read it. Don't just trust me, let's see it for ourselves. One of the very first things Socrates said, so we're all the way down, what are we on, page 87, but all the way back up at page one of the first things Socrates says, when does Socrates start talking? Page 5. He says, send self home. Talking about his wife, but there might be a special meeting. Take self home. Are we returning to self through the art of the Logos? Maybe, I don't know. He talked about their pleasure and pain, or the warring opposites in our physical world, seem to be united together from one summit. Could that be tied to Nous and Usia? And if Aesop, who makes fables, composed a myth, he would unite their heads together. So we talk about a two-headed monster. It'd be a one-headed monster with two bodies. Socrates says he follows the instructions of his dreams, which is a puzzle. But now at the end of the text, he's talking about the daemon being a guide assigned to us. So if that's the guide assigned to us from the gods, then repeated commands of the muse. So maybe our dreams are a way in which our daemon communicates with us. Possibly. Again, make it a hypothesis. That's dianoia. Make a hypothesis. Using your highest... If we go into it, on an intersection, he said use... Fuck it, let's look at it. So this is a section where he gives us an overview of how to create our own dianoia. Okay, create a hypothesis using your loftiest vision. Whatever comes to light best. See if it's sufficient. Don't mix the dry with the wet, as these anti-logos people do. People who hate, they try and mix. Like you ask a politician a question about a cause of a problem, they will talk about the effects or they'll jump around, they'll mix the dry with the wet. No, stay focused. Create a hypothesis by discussing causes. But then, after talking about causes, push the implications. Where did he say that? Yes, push the implications, the consequences that follow, to see if they are concordant and or discordant with what you've been learning in your trust of Socrates. This is how you will find the real beings. And by the way, create a new one. Keep making them. See what comes to light for you. What's the one that is most sufficient for you? What's the one that explains it, helps you understand it, and will trigger that nous experience? All the way back at page 5, he says, okay, tell Euvenos to be strong if he is of sound mind. And then we have phronesis in here. Sophrosoon. No, it's sound for us. Yeah, interesting. The Greek word for sound-mindedness or temperance is sophrosoon. Has the word phronesis in it. So he is saying, so the word "so" in Greek means the underlying conditions. Like a singlet is a "so" shirt, an undershirt, underlying, or the conditions for a shirt, or the what's underneath the shirt. So if he has what's needed for phronesis, which is a puzzle, tell him to follow me as quickly as possible. And Simius is like, what? But you're gonna die. And Socrates is like, yeah, isn't Euvenos a philosopher? If he's been doing his life's work, what we're here for, our destiny, our purpose, he's calling it our life's work, by the way. To whatever we're going to learn in the text today. Whatever we learn in this text, says Socrates, this is the introduction, will be our life's work. So this whole escaping the cycles of reincarnation, nurturing and education, is our purpose, which might tie in with the idea of justice, doing your intended function. And if it's your life's work, it might be a higher cause than physical causes like pleasures and pains. So it might be our purpose. Then he'll follow me as quickly as he can. And he goes on to say, by the way, this separating our soul from the body is philosophy. So he doesn't have to die, like he's not his last death, but that's what philosophy is. Like, I'm going somewhere, remind Euvenos to quickly follow me up there. Or, it's not really up, but follow me, like separate your soul and meet me there. So all of this is bringing us to where we are now. We have a unique situation. If you're here, you got lucky, or you've done some work in this life or in previous lives to come across that which is not spoken about yet since Socrates. That there is a kind of learning that we can do in this text now, because we have the text with the actual words. So all those, like that puzzle that we just saw, if he has sophronesis, no text will have that word in Greek. Even the Balboa translation says of sound mind. Now, we can understand why he says that, because let's write this in a different color. Because sophrosoon is the Greek word for sound-mindedness, which is that first virtue. Sound-mindedness. Sometimes people call it temperance. That's that first virtue. Where's our snowman? This guy. You know, having your whole soul desiring the same thing. temperance or sound-mindedness. And phronesis, Balboa translates as mindfulness, because we don't have an English word for the word phronesis. So what are you going to do? He puts it in purple to remind us, hey, it's not really mindfulness. It's a huge question, because later on he says this is a fifth virtue that the other four you trade in for like a gold coin. So the word was sophron, which is the first part of sound-mindedness and the root of phronesis. So you can see why he said of sound mind. But if we have the Greek, we might recognize a puzzle. And if it's a puzzle right at the beginning, it's going to have a lot of impact. It's a foreshadowing of what's to come. It's a question or a promise. If it's a well-written work, it should pay off with an answer. And that answer should only come at the end when we've done all the work. What kind of work? Well, that's part of it. You have to learn your work. He says, if he's done his life's work in a worthy way, that's a clue. If we've done the work of this text in a worthy way, then we might be able to uncover there's a question there. And only when we've done our work in a worthy way can we find the answer. What's the question? Question is, why the heck is he saying, if he's done his life work in a worthy way, then Euvenos, if he has so phron, he will follow Socrates as quickly as possible to where he's departing to. That's a huge puzzle. So one of the first things he says, a puzzle in the logos or words, which is why we can only talk about it today. So good for us.
Wow.
So what's the puzzle? What is sophron? Is it sound mind? Well, the root of, see, the reason why sophrosun is the word so means underlying. Temperance is the underlying condition for the virtues. So often the Greeks will say sophrosun to mean all of the virtues, because sophrosun means all of the parts ordered properly. So in other words, all of the virtues being there, which is also justice. Everything doing their proper function. But what about the second part? What the heck is phronesis? Oh, that's one of the hugest questions in the text. So if he has the underlying conditions for phronesis, then he will want to leave his body and follow me in what we call death, but what a philosopher would call nous. If you have the underlying conditions, what's the underlying conditions for the experience of that? The underlying conditions for nous, it's our education, our dianoia, plus our nurture. The virtues, the four that we trade in for. Both our dianoia, our dialectics, our learning, and our virtues are needed together to trigger this nous experience of being a knowing for certain. Tell Ricky Gervais, yes, you can experience what it's like being dead and come back and talk about it. That's what Socrates did. In fact, you should do it. If you're doing your life's work properly, you should be. By the way, all yogas have this as its fundamental essence. Some way of separating from your physical senses. And if you've done your life's work in your worthy way, you'll want to have the conditions for phronesis, you'll want to experience nous or separate the soul from the body. Do we see it in the text? Yep, all the way at the end, we have this Socrates mentioned. Here is where we are talking about demons. Here we go. By the way, if our soul did dissipate, as Dawkins and Gervais might say, I'm just using them as an example, by the way, because they're sort of well known and in popular culture. If the soul if the soul did dissipate after death, that would be a windfall for people who've lived their life in vice, wicked people. So there'd be no consequence to their self, because the soul somehow carries along your education and nurture. There is no other escape from the soul or from vice except the salvation as becoming as good and phronesis as possible. Phronimotatin, the most phronesis as possible. All of the potatoes in the stew. Phronimotatin. Okay? The soul goes to the realm of the invisible, possessing nothing else. What are we here for? Well, one way of answering that question is, what can we take with us if this life here, if the soul is immortal, which we've shown, we've trusted, but also hopefully you've been doing some practice of the dialectic and you following the arguments, and balloons for you if you do. So you've got not just trust, but also dianoia, that our soul is immortal and goes through reincarnation. You haven't probably, I mean, if you've experienced it, then you've got nous too, so good for you. But for a lot of people watching, it's only trust or level of, that's CBs, or maybe you've been developing dianoia. Good for you if you have. Level of simius. Then, one way of answering what's our purpose or cause, what can we take with us? Because compared to eternity, this life is very, very short. Compared to eternity, oh my God.
Wow. Wow.
Come on, man.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
So what do we take with us? Well, Socrates is telling us. He doesn't tell us everything directly, but sometimes he does. What's he saying? You take with you nothing except your education and nurture. What's the education? Here. What's our nurture? Where's our snowman? Here. The virtues. In other words, defining it with your education and demonstrating it with your virtues, doing it at all times. What's that? Definition and demonstration. Oh my God, we are a living dialectic. Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
Wow.
Our education and our nurture. So by the way, what's that? That's the underlying conditions for phronesis, right? Why? Because dianoia, as our quote said earlier, is the conditions for nous. That's why we're doing dianoia. Where's that quote? Bring it up again, because why not? There's that quote. Through dianoia, you approach closest to the nous, and then the other quote, until the divine self should liberate us, because it's a kind of purification of the phronesis of the body, like a pitcher. Okay. Those who've practiced philosophy in the right way are most eager to liberate self. This liberation and separation of the soul from the body is the self-study or exercise of the philosophers. So, do we have enough to answer that question about Euvenos? Does he, if he has the conditions for phronesis? What are those conditions? We go to the realm of the invisible, possessing our education and nurture. So if the realm of the invisible is where we get nous or experience being, then our education, dianoia, plus our virtues and nurture, or our definition and demonstration, are the conditions for conditions for phronesis. It's also the conditions for nous, but we also want to integrate it, so there's our virtues. We trade our virtues in for phronesis after our spiritual initiation. So while dianoia can experience nous, you also want to have the virtues so you can upgrade them into a state of self. So it's not just academic understanding, it's experience, spiritual. It's not just spiritual, it is also understanding. It's both. It's walking the walk, nurture, virtue, and talking the talk, art of the logos, dianoia. So if that's the conditions for nous and for phronesis, then it's the sophrone. The conditions for phronesis. So that's a hypothesis, an if, that sufficiently explains the question of that section of the text. It might not be sufficient for you. It might not be sufficient for me if I keep reading and discover something more. That's the nature of dianoia. You can keep polishing it up or improving it. That's what we read. Create a new hypothesis. See if it's more consonant, harmonious. Brings to light what's sufficient for you. Okay, so one of our questions today was, how come no one's talking about this? Well, good question. I hope today we've given enough material or insights or self-logos from the words of Socrates for you to create a hypothesis to explain your question. That's dianoia. And I hope you're carrying your question and wondering about it at all times. That's virtue. If you do both, you'll get nous and phronesis. Not just a one-off glimpse of reality, you can integrate it. And as we read, you can even you can have a soul always in that state of being. And if you've gotten there through the art of the logos, unlike pictures or other spiritual traditions, you will know what logos maintains it. So the art of the logos is not just needed to reach phronesis, but to maintain it. Why is that interesting? Well, Socrates just said one of the reasons why these scientists was not into philosophy and not really understanding causes is right at the end, where is it? Is they're not talking about, where is it? One of the reasons that they stink is, or they can't get into philosophy and therefore not even the conditions for phronesis, is when they look at causes. Yeah, let's say. They are not finding the powers and forces that hold selves together. The power by which everything is in the best possible way. So there's understanding why we have our problems, what are we here for, and that sort of thing. By the way, there must be something good that binds them things together, and it also has to have a daemonic force. There's something that holds things together in the best possible way. There's a power and there is a daemonic force. So one of the benefits of phronesis is you will have, through the art of the logos, a way of holding that together, that ultimate virtue. Because a lover of learning should become a lover of philosopher.
Come on, man.
That's why we're saying, come on, man. We encourage people, hey, no one's talking about it, and there's reasons for that, but you can. We got the text now. You can upgrade from loving of learning to loving of philosophy, but even loving of philosophy becomes a lover of phronesis. That learning upgrades in the experience through the art of the logos and virtue into phronesis, which gives you what you need to maintain it. People who are lovers of fighting, debate bros or talking heads on mainstream media, they're lovers of fighting and yelling and acting smart. They don't have that state of phronesis to know whether the logos will maintain it. That's huge. And by the way, that force is daemonic. You are becoming most like a daemon because the logos benefits you if it A, brings you to that state, and B, maintains that state. And C, goes beyond. Daemon. What's the daemon? A spiritual guide to the next realm, and then maybe you meet better men and gods and daemons that can go beyond, fellow guides and travelers. Socrates said that maintains and brings you to the art of the logos, dianoia, and practicing it. Well, I guess practicing it would be the art of the logos. So dianoia and virtue, we can bring together in the word art of the logos, that which we need to learn after trust or loving of learning, which can lead us into nous and phronesis, but also maintain it through the logos, knowing what things to talk about. And also, by the way, once we're there, we're also doing stuff. We have guides and travelers, so we're probably going to be using the art of the logos to go beyond. So what? Well, first of all, it's cool. And it'd be nice, but also it's a kind of learning that doesn't lose its power, so it's needed not only to get to that next realm, but go beyond it. And also, it's our proper work. So it's needed to escape just the punishments and rebirth. That sucks. I mean, it's good to escape it. And also, that was something we would not have seen if we weren't doing our work here in the proper way. As above, so below. We had to read this in a proper way. We had to be actually not just trusting him, like some people reading the book. Oh, yeah, sounds good. I mean, I'll believe some things, but some things Socrates missed the mark. He's no modern. He didn't have computers back then. So some things are okay. Socrates, ask anyone who reads at that level. They're like Simmias and Cebes. They might follow him, but then as soon as somebody like Simmias and Cebes comes along and uses an argument that sounds familiar or probable, like scientists, probability, that's their domain, probability, then they'll drop it. Everyone who's not reading in this way that I've met, that's how they talk. Yeah, I like Socrates. Some of his arguments make sense, but he kind of drops the ball, and he's no modern. He didn't have modern science. What are you doing? You're not reading in the proper way. You're not doing your justice. With courage, virile. Be virile. Because you're at the level of belief. You're just going to agree with whatever conforms with your beliefs. That's how most people think. That's how come people can be scammed by con artists and fascists and things. We are specifically being told to not be like Simmias and Cebes and everyone in the room who just trusted him and thought in that way. Because all of them, when Simmias and Cebes brought up the counterattacks, even after 4 very good arguments to show the soul is immortal and reincarnation exists. Those two arguments were so familiar with the religious mythology of the time that everyone threw everything out. That's us. We are Simmies and Seabees, unless we learn the art of the logos. Socrates says that's the worst condition we have to be on guard for. And if we were learning the art of the logos, we would see the importance of it. If we were doing it, practicing our dialectics, repeating this as much as we can, coming back to this podcast over and over, we're creating the conditions for our own movement. Well, if we're doing it, we're in here. Creating the conditions for our own phronesis, which can maintain it, will help us to reach it, maintain it, and go beyond. Three kinds of ousia, by the way. Keep that in the back of your mind. Keep that in your inventory as a possible question. Is there 3 kinds of ousia? Anyway, that's a puzzle. So why are we talking about all this now? Well, we are about to read Socrates telling us, he's given us, he is giving us a lot of clues and questions because he wants us to do it properly. He's not baby feeding it, because then we'll stay at trust and then we'll have all the problems. Become a villain, trust people who are untrustworthy and then end up hating people like a villain does. Every villain story. I was very trustworthy, but then my mother beat me and now I hate humans. They must all pay because you didn't have the art of the logos to judge people. The same way you didn't have the art of judging to judge people, you didn't have the art of the logos to judge arguments. We need the art of the logos. We need to be here so we don't fall into the problems caused by trust, and we have what we need to go beyond. It is a journey. Another way of saying that, the art of the logos is needed to purify ourselves from our problems caused by trusting those who are untrustworthy. We don't even know it, our pathologos and prejudices, and also perfect ourselves towards our destiny. With all that in mind, Socrates is about to drop something else. He's going to say something directly. He's going to come out and say it right before he dies. He's going to say what the earth looks like. He's been talking about our proper function here. He's been talking about the kinds of vices, the kinds of weird, misshapen snowmen who are not lovers of learning, and then lovers of philosophy. He's been talking a lot about our souls, talking a lot about our souls. He's been talking about reincarnation. He's been talking about daemons, who are guides. He's been talking about our proper function, proper work, proper life's work. He's been talking about how that affects your incarnations, but also if you do your proper work, you might be able to escape or complete. Let's say complete, because he uses the word complete. He doesn't use the word escape. That's a Hindu expression, escaping the cycles of death and rebirth. Complete reincarnation and go beyond. He's been talking about how even then, how you take with you your education and nurture, and we have been putting the pieces together to figure out that is our art. That's our logos and dialectic, or dianoia, making us a philodianoia. It's a better word than philosopher, actually. Plus our virtues, or we could say definition and demonstration. So we are walking the talk, walk and talking the talk, demonstration of that very thing. So if it's the dialectic, we are the dialectic. So we're literally walking the talk and talking the walk. Demonstration. Okay. And we can unify all that together as the art of the logos. So it's an art because it requires you to demonstrate it and understand it. But also this leads to phronesis, or phronesis ousia. That's another word. Phronotin is ousia. Let's say phronesis. That works. So let's write reincarnation better. So we've been talking about our souls going through cycles of reincarnation, guided by our daemons. But in the text, right at the start, again, if it's at the start, it's a puzzle. It's a clue. It's a foreshadowing. It's well written. Right at the start on page 5, one of the very first things said, Phaedo said, so Socrates said, hey, were you there at the death of Socrates? Oh yeah, big time. Big time.
Wow. Wow.
Can you tell me exactly what happened? Well, I did not feel pity. He appeared like a good daemon in his disposition and logos. In his disposition, demonstration, and logos, definition, in his education and nurture. Oh, maybe he has got there. He's reached it. He's got phronesis. Appeared like a daemon. So he will have divine providence and farewell as soon as he arrives in the next world. Okay? He appeared like a good daemon. That is a key puzzle. So if you have phronesis and art of the logos, maybe you are yourself like a... Oops. Makes you... like a daemon? Question mark. It's a puzzle. Okay, but if you are like a daemon, having completed your life's work, completed your reincarnation to go beyond, taking your education and virtue and nurture with you, taking your art of the logos, which also includes phronesis. So if it's an art, you might be yourself like a daemon. If you're going beyond, you take all that to go with, let's get the term from the text. Okay. Socrates said, I will be present with those gods that are wise and good, and later with human beings who have completed their life, says completing your life's work, that are better than those here. Gods who are good masters. So, better men and gods. And also at the end, right at the end where we are now, he also calls those better men and gods, fellow travelers and leaders. So, better humans completed everything we're saying here, all this that we're saying is our life's work, and gods who are also what do you call it? Fellow travelers and guides. Who are also fellow. Let's move that over a little bit. Who are also fellow travelers and guides. Which means they are still going somewhere. So they are, therefore, if they're traveling and guiding, they are going somewhere. Traveling, we'll see. Going somewhere. So, what can we see from all this that he's been talking about so far? There's a lot going on that he's laid out for us in his swan song. Well, we have souls that are non-physical. So already we've got a big thing is we've got the physical world over here. So we've got the physical world. Physical, physical world. And we can also call that the realm of becoming. Realm or dimension of becoming. Now let's just make sure the word realm and or dimension is in the text. Oh, I've been writing. Okay, sorry guys, I've been on the wrong page. So this is our, I think what I missed was we take the art of the Logos, our learning and our phronesis with us to better humans and gods who are also fellow travelers and guides, which means we must be going somewhere. So we start in this physical world. So we start, hopefully we're a lover of learning and not getting interested in pleasures and pains, becoming a lover of fame or riches. But now I had the question, is dimension or realm in the text? R-E-A-L-M. Yes, realm is used many times. The soul goes to the realm of the invisible, the realm of the unseen or Hades. He talks about the visible realm. Okay, all the way through he talks about realm. Does he talk about dimensions? How do you spell dimension? Dimension? D-M-E... No. No, sorry, he just uses the word realm, okay. The same word as dimension, by the way, but realm is in there. If we, yeah, dimension is another way of referring to realms, but we can cross that out or a line through that because it's not in the text. We want to stay in the text as much as we can. Let's. And we know it's dimensions, but let's stay in the text. Realm of becoming. Now, that's probably a translator's choice, by the way. So dimension works. If dimension helps you think of it better, then that's fine. So where are we? Well, lover of learning is here. Not in the game yet. Oh goodness, sorry guys. Sorry. Was working. Oh, no, I'm in the wrong one. So we're working here, the physical world of becoming. It's where we start. Before philosophy takes us, we're here. Hopefully we're a lover of learning and not lover of riches or honors, so we can get into philosophy. But then when philosophy, come on man, takes its hold, we get into the real work. Okay, so there is a different dimension that is non-physical that our soul is in. So already we've gone from this third dimensional world to a fourth dimension of souls. These souls are going through reincarnation. So there's a fourth dimension of souls, and there might be a fifth dimension that it goes into that the daemon guides us to, based on how we lived in our world, based on our education and nurture, how we lived. So we've got a possible fourth dimension of the soul, a possible fifth dimension. So the soul might maybe float above the physical world and stuff, maybe. So there's a possible fourth, a possible fifth. But if we complete do our proper life's work again, so if there is a proper life's work, there is an objective purpose or destiny. And if there is a proper life's work, there's what we need for justice, because justice is doing your proper function. Whether it's the justice within each of the parts of the soul, for the three individual virtues, sound-mindedness, courage, and wisdom, or if it's the justice as a whole. One of the questions today, moving from parts to whole, as we talked about in Gabe's channel, rising to a greater level of wholes. If there is such a thing, then we can go from this fourth and fifth dimension after completing our reincarnation to go beyond, after doing our proper life's work, through our education and nurture, which is what? Logos and dialectic, which is dianoia, plus the virtues, our definition and demonstration, which is the art of the logos. So the dialectic and the virtues lead to these lead to nous and phronesis. So not just the experience of knowledge, phronesis, but and all of that together we are saying, so the is needed for the art of the logos. Why? Because for an art, you have to, all of this. Why? You have to have a paradigm. And if you can know it directly, even better than studying the paradigm of the healthy body in doctor school, medical school. Nous for the paradigm. You also have to have your understanding of it, the terms of the logos and the structure of the dialectic. That's your dianoia. But you have to be also practicing it. You know, you learn medicine, you have to spend a few years like those funny people in the show Scrubs, the baby doctors doing the rounds. I don't know what it's called, but you have to train. That's the virtues or demonstration. So you have nous, you have your understanding, you have the virtues. By the way, all of those together creates a certain state of being in the self. That's the disposition of Socrates and his logos that was said to be like a daemon. All of that together is needed for an art. You need to be in a certain state to do it automatically. You need to have the understanding from which you are, and the paradigm from which you can have a state of self, which you can automatically do it without even thinking sometimes. So all that together, education and nurture, what is it? Logos and dialectic is dianoia, plus the virtues leads to nous and phronesis. All of that together is the art of the logos. The thing that we need most to avoid the worst defect of the soul, hating the logos and not reaching truth. So that's what we can bring with us. So we know what we can bring with us. So we've got a kind of working hypothesis for our purpose. By the way, also he said it's our proper life's work. So we've got a lot of reasons. So this hypothesis that our purpose here is to master the art of the logos is consistent or harmonious or concordant as a hypothesis with the other parts of the text, which is what we just read about how to create our own hypotheses. So all that art of the logos allows us to escape this fourth dimension and the fifth dimension to reach better humans who've completed this reincarnation cycle. So not only the physical, not only the soul, not only that realm, the next realm, but they've completed that. So here's a sixth dimension possibly of better humans and gods, but we take our art of the logos with us, so we must be needing it. Not just the state of phronesis, but the art of the logos. So if we really want to complete our reincarnation, it's no good just experiencing it in other spiritual traditions. You need the art of the logos with you in your back pocket. Why? Because we are these better humans who have completed their work, and gods are fellow travelers and guides. In other words, we are going somewhere else. So if we have the art of the logos, there's a question, does that make us like a daemon? Because wouldn't a daemon who's guiding us, you'd be using the art of the logos? Because it's an art that benefits using the paradigm, knowing where we're supposed to go, having the understanding? That's a question. Because Socrates is said to be like a great daemon when he was functioning with his art in this whole thing. Anyway, that's a question. We go with better humans and gods who are fellow travelers and guides. So just to use colloquial terminology, if we say the 3D world is the world of time and space of becoming, which is in that back and forth of pleasure and pain, which is how the text starts. By the way, pleasure and pain are inequivocably tied to each other. So if Aesop made a fable, he would give them two bodies, but a single head in a higher dimension of being. And by the way, Phaedo says, let's go back. Phaedo says in the beginning, being with Socrates was strange because it was right at the start. He said, right before Socrates even says anything. Okay, he said, look, so can you tell me every detail, says Socrates. So this is right at the beginning. Phaedo says, sure. It was a wonderful experience. I didn't feel pity. He appeared like a good daemon in his disposition and logos, nurturing and education. Art of the logos, maybe. He would fare well in the next world. I had no feeling of pity, as would seem natural to people to my present sorrow. Now he's sad Socrates is dead. Nor any pleasure, since we were engaged in philosophy, just as we had become accustomed to. Lover of learning, accustomed to it. So we can maybe make a assessment of even Phaedo, our narrator. And if the title of the book is Phaedo, maybe that's part of what we're supposed to be doing, judging where Phaedo is? I don't know, maybe, could be. Ooh, there's a question. And if it's the title of the book, maybe it'll bring everything together if we can judge Phaedo artfully with the art of the logos. Wow, that's a big one that just came up.
Wow. 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 Wow.
Okay. The logos is of that sort. A strange experience came over me. An unusual mixture sprung from both pleasure and pain blended together at the same time. So interesting. Then Socrates goes on and says, hey, by the way, it's strange how pleasure is tied to it, what's believed to be its opposite, a foreshadowing of the actual opposites, life and death, needed for the argument about the soul, equal and unequal, hot and cold, pleasure and pain, united together from one summit. So if being engaged in the logos with Socrates is a unusual mixture of both pleasure and pain, maybe that's what he's talking about here. So there's puzzles to unpack that we can use, hopefully, the art of the logos to unpack. At any rate, we have this world of becoming with those apparent opposites, which maybe have a shared head and two bodies. A scary, scary one-headed monster. Oh my God, it's a one-headed monster. Okay. So if that's the 3D world, our souls can separate from the body. That's what we've been talking about. So that's maybe the fourth dimension. Again, these are just hypotheses. We don't know yet, but this is just how we're supposed to think. This is the dianoia part. Okay, if there is a realm that our souls can move into, maybe that's the fifth dimension, because we have to separate ourselves, collect ourselves together. And then there's reincarnation, so there might be something that we do after. But if there's our proper life's work to complete our reincarnation and go beyond, bringing our education and nurture, what we're calling the art of the logos, which might be like a daemon, then separating from these two, so maybe this is our pleasure and pain. Maybe a soul is kind of pain, and I don't know, maybe there's pain in the fourth dimension. Maybe they are bound together with a single head. At any rate, if there is an escape from it, they must be somewhere. That's where you find better humans and gods who've completed the fourth and fifth dimension stuff. So we can say that might be the sixth dimension. And if they are travelers and guides, they must be going somewhere. So there's a possible seventh dimension. So necessarily, we are working from a hypothesis that there may be seventh different dimensions or realms that we can deduce by solving the puzzle, by doing our text's proper work in the proper way. That's the game. That's the play. Look at this. We're like Sherlock Holmes. Literally. We have our little Sherlock Holmes hat on. And we said this right at the beginning. We have a wizard's hat and a Sherlock Holmes hat combined. That's what it means to be a philosopher. Wizard's hat because we are like Gandalf, a true hero and a true adventurer. And in the true spiritual tradition, many have a staff, but few are actual Gandalfs.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
We also have the Sherlock Holmes hat because we have to solve all this. Now, all of this is a kind of bringing everything together into a picture, but also creating a hypothesis about dimensions, because the next thing we're going to read is Socrates describing what this world looks like, and maybe what this world looks like, and maybe what the sixth dimension looks like, and maybe there's some clues about the seventh. He is saying, look, the way, the nature and size of the earth, the way that physical people, like non-Socrates, non-philosophers talk about, is not true. Let's read it. So after all this, going through all of this, all the way down to even talking about the daemons and how guides and stuff, and how it's important to live in the right way because it affects our incarnation, and how our daemon is our guide during our life and into our reincarnation. So through all that, he says, by the way, after all of that, I've defined philosophy, I've demonstrated in my conversation, I've divided up into many parts, giving you pieces to solve. I even addressed the counterattacks from Simmias and Cebes that threw everyone, even Phaedo, into disarray. I was able to diagnose the state of the world in 2020, whatever you're watching, 2,500 years in the future. I was able to diagnose the conditions and the causes and prescribe the remedy, the art of the logos, and predict exactly the way the world is right now. After all that, right before I die, I'm going to do something else.
Wow.
Haven't you done enough, Socrates? haven't you done enough? Not yet. I am going to describe the earth. Because there are many and wonderful habitations belonging to the earth, and the self of the earth is not as it's supposed to be by those who are used to talking about it. We already have a certain opinion of apparent experts, but hey, people who are used to talking about, geologists, I would say, are missing the mark in terms of her size and her nature and her size. It's not the way it's supposed to be by those who are used to talking about the earth in regards to her nature or her size, as I have been persuaded by someone. Simius says, "What do you mean by this?" He said, "What?"
Wow. Wow. What? 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 What?
He says, "What? For I have also heard much said about the earth. But it's not what has convinced you, so please tell me about it." And then he's going to drop away from his dialectical question and answer, nurturing people, encouraging people to ask questions, encouraging people to try the art of the logos if they can, try the dialectic, back and forth. He's going to make a long ass speech that's going to sound super weird. All these terms and these metaphorical names for them. Because he is going, and it's the end, so it should, if we're talking about the dialectic, because we are doing a dialectic, and if it's the ultimate standard, if it's dianoia, then the text should be dialectic too. So we should see these 4 sections. He's given his definition of philosophy and the doctrine. He's demonstrated in the 4 arguments to demonstrate it, and also addressing the specific counterattacks, so what it is and what it isn't. The 2 counterattacks from the religious mythologies about death from Simius and Cebes. He's also given us all these clues, dividing it up, relating to lots of different things. The daemons, our reincarnations, becoming a bee, becoming a hawk, becoming like lots of divisions, giving us what we need to solve puzzles, to pass on the art. So we're asking, okay, what's this last speech about? And does it meet the conditions of the 4? Because it should, because that's what it means to have a pattern. That's what it means to see through an art. Oh, you've got a head, you've got a neck, you've got a body, you probably have legs, says someone with the art of medicine. So someone with the art of the logos, got a definition, you got demonstration, got division, you're probably going to have synthesis and analysis. So it might be something like that in this long ass weird speech. And it might, well, if it is, it should synthesize in some way everything we've been talking about, and it should allow us to apply that analysis, apply that synthesis, that unifying together into a complete understanding somehow, back to the original definition that he gave, his doctrine of philosophy, so that this thing is seen in a new light, because that's how ousia and the dialectic and our learning works. This is our hypothesis, a question we're going to have, we're going to bring to the next reading with us to maybe see it in a new way, maybe make sense of it, because it's going to be weird. It's going to be weird. But because everything else has been not straightforward, but kind of straightforward, more or less, question and answer. Simius and Cebes has been talking, so they're kind of a mouthpiece for us. They're as dumb as we are. Well, no, not dumb as we are, but Cebes seems to be representing trust. Simius seems to be representing someone developing dianoia slowly. But Socrates is going off on his own here. And he's going to talk about the way the earth is, but if he's been talking about all this, 7 possible different dimensions, then it is likely, again, hypothesis, it's not knowledge, but likely that whatever he's going to say now is not just going to be what the physical world looks like. He's not going to say, it's blue and green, and sometimes it's dark. Oh, very good. Very good. He's not going to do that, probably. I mean, that'd be mental if he did. He's probably going to be talking about the 3rd, well, probably the 4th, the 5th, maybe the 6th, and maybe the 7th. Because that has all been mentioned already. either explicitly in the fourth and fifth, or implicitly through the divisions because he wants us to play. He is in a dialectic with us. He's asking the questions, we have to give the answers. That's why it's a game. That's why he's magical. And if he is able to separate from time and space and experience eternity, then of course he can communicate to us through time. He's just that good. And we can be, if we become like a daemon and do our life's work with the art of the logos. So maybe we can function like Socrates to people to benefit them through time the way he has, if we can finish this text and put it all together. Maybe. So there's good reasons for us to be puzzled. Thumbs up, says Socrates. Because we are, in doing this, in reading this, through the dialectic, we are matching him, we are talking to him, and what does he want to pass on? The art of the logos. We are developing the art of the logos. And so if we are matching him and doing what we're supposed to do, we might be able to escape this stuff, and we might find ourselves meeting Socrates there. He said, hey, if you're doing philosophy in the right way, follow me as quickly as you can. I will be a better human and with better masters, and we can go to this dimension here. So in doing this, we are creating the conditions for the sixth for us, and maybe even a glimpse into the seventh. So fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh dimensions are likely going to be touched on in this next part. We have to look out for it. That's how we read. It's not just boring. Oh, that's an interesting set of opinions. Probably wrong, because look how long ago he was. None of that crap. Modern thinking. Well, we are right because we are the latest. Wisdom comes from age. Or no, youth. We're the youngest generation. So, and we have science. So we are smartest. None of that crap. That's nonsense. It has nothing to do with the art of the logos. That's why it's nonsense. It's just age. And we all know old people who are not smart and young people who are not smart. So how do we read? We have to play. We have to bring in questions and puzzles. If we weren't reading to this level of participation, we wouldn't have this model. We wouldn't have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different dimensions on the table. So if we would read it, it would make no sense. And just like the way it's taught in schools now, we would just throw it in the garbage and miss the most important thing that Socrates is saying. This is his life's work. He's passing on the art of the logos to us. And we, thankfully to the Balboas, in the last 5 years, have the ability to play. If you're here and you've gotten this far, good for you. You are in a rare situation. You've done this enough in your past lives to come across this, what we need for this, to reach here and maybe even there. So, as Socrates says, don't drop the ball. Don't go pursuing anything else and those other pleasures. Self-imprisonment is the worst kind of imprisonment. It's the greatest aid to your imprisonment, especially pleasures and desires, because you'll think it's most real. Oh, this is most real. Oh, yeah, look at all the lovely cake and sexy times and beer that I can have here. Oh, yum, yum, yum. No. That's not most real and clear. There's this, and this, and this, and this. So, we're a very strange period of history, in a very strange intersection of lives and fate and destiny with Socrates, who is himself likely at least here, because he knows, hey, I know where I'm going, tell Euvenos to meet me. And maybe even Socrates hung out there a little bit. So he's probably very easily able to talk to us through time. But for whatever reason, our souls have met the criteria to be able to listen and talk with him and match him, because he wants us to play. As he invited Simmias and Cebes to play, he said, hey, if you guys can see, please, I'll follow you. It's okay. You're Hercules, I'm Hercules' assistant. Like, you're the hero. You can do it. You can be the greatest hero. And if you're watching, you can be the greatest hero. Because you're in the game. You can play. Keep at it. I'm gently encouraging and nurturing and inviting you to play the way that philosophy is said to act, says Socrates. So how do we play? Take all this in mind in a question with the reading of his long ass speech that's to come. Because he's going to describe the earth. Now, of course, he's not going to spend his last breaths talking about the physical world that he's just said is a shadow of real being. And there's even the sixth dimension and they even go to seventh. So he's probably not going to drop the ball and talk about the physical world, obviously. That's why it was so confusing the first time we read it 2 episodes ago. We needed to go through our revision. Not just once, 2 episodes. This is the 2nd episode in a row where we had to revise everything to prepare for this speech. The first time we read it, it made no sense. We said,
What in the heck are we talking about here?
and we concluded about it.
Flibbity-jibbity nonsense.
We said it was flibbity-jibbity nonsense. Because we didn't do the work. Now we did. So good for us. And we have confetti. Confetti. Yay, confetti. But now we have, because now we're playing, now we're matching. So with all this, looking out for at least 1, 2, 3, 4 higher dimensions than the Earth. That's what we're taking with us for the reading, to make it meaningful, to make it make sense, and maybe unlock what we're here to do. And join Socrates where he is. And hey, if it's outside of time and space, maybe he's there right now, waiting for us to join him to make this journey to the 7th. Wow. Literally, that's not even a metaphor. Outside of time and space, it might be 2,500 years to this realm, but to Socrates, who's in here, waiting to go here, right now he's calling us. This is what I'm going to do. This is going to be my last action. Meet me here, because we are going here. And he's going to talk about what all that is, some mysterious way that we have to puzzle about with this question, with this reflection, with this new seeing, because we are playing the game. We're showing our level of nurture and education. We are showing our virtues. We are demonstrating it. We are playing. It's a living text, as we are living people. That is the Logos. And of course it is, because Socrates is like a daemon. Like a daemon. So, maybe inviting us to here, maybe we can go here. At least we're keeping that as a hypothesis, a big ass question into the reading. The most significant part of the text, maybe. The greatest journey for us, maybe. On that bombshell. And on that cliffhanger, wow, what a cliffhanger.
Wow.
I really hope to see you next time. I hope this has got you puzzled. I hope you're going to have some interesting dreams about this tonight. Take note of them, because Socrates mentioned his dreams and following instructions, which might make your dreams tonight worth listening to if you've gotten this far. If you have, well done. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to be live streaming now on YouTube and Twitch at the same time, I think. So if you have a preference, you can find me there or here. Feel free to leave comments in the chat and like and subscribe on YouTube. You can join me on Twitch. Thank you so much, Gabe, for hanging out before the chat and sharing those amazing reflections and fantastic questions. Super relevant and to what we're reading, and super helpful to guide this conversation reflection today. Thank you to my other followers on Twitch. If you want to follow on Twitch, Awakening Philosophy at twitch.tv. Twitch.tv/awakening. Links below. Join the Discord if you would like to. And if you have the means and the inclination, as Socrates says, if you're going to spend money, spend money on someone singing this kind of a song to your soul. You're welcome to support on Patreon. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you next time.